Good morning and welcome to today's GT News webinar, Minimize Payment Failures and Maximize Efficiency, How to Avoid Payment Failures and Improve Straight-Through Processing, proudly sponsored by SWIFTRef. My name is Tarika Adams and I will be your host. Our speakers today are Patrick Newton, Head of Reference Data at SWIFT, Stephen Darnley, Corporate Treasurer at IATA, and Suresh Dut, Banking Connectivity Specialist at IATA. Before we begin, please listen to the following housekeeping points. If you experience any technical difficulties, please type them into the Q&A panel box located on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. There will be a WebEx producer to respond to your message immediately. Questions for the speakers should also be typed into the Q&A panel. We will address as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Please ensure to send your questions to all panelists. Otherwise, we may not be able to read them out loud. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, so if you miss anything or think a colleague would be interested, you will be sent a link to access the recording in the next week. I would now like to hand you over to your first speaker for today, Mr. Suresh Dut. Welcome, Suresh, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, sorry, Tarika. I think it's my first. I'm first.
Patrick, that is correct.
Yeah, no worries. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Newton. I'm the Global Head of Reference Data at SWIFT, and it is my pleasure to hopefully share with you, together with IATA, some insights that might provide insightful and useful to you in your own personal businesses. SWIFT, for those of you not familiar with it, was created as a cooperative just over 40 years ago by the financial industry, and has predominantly been focusing, especially in the first 25 years of its existence, on interbank connectivity and automating anything related to automation of international financial transactions. However, things have strongly evolved, and one of the biggest evolutions we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years is the addition of corporates joining the SWIFT community. And therefore, SWIFT is now offering also, as part of the value propositions, it has available a number of solutions for corporates, whether they're connected to the SWIFT network or not. So that is basically the foundation of what we do. If we look on the next slide, basically for corporates, the value proposition is divided in 4 different dimensions. The first one, secure financial connectivity. So, as I said before, corporates can join the SWIFT network and use the network to communicate via the same channels as the bank do with other banks, with their counterparty banks, and do so. Today, we have well over 1,000 corporates on a global scale that have connected to the SWIFT network and use the SWIFT connectivity as part of the solutions that they use for their international transaction processing. A second dimension has to do with identity and mandate management. Some of you might be familiar with the name of the solution, 3SKey. It is basically a way to securely authenticate and approve transactions with banks across all banking channels. So with one single token, with one device, you can reach multiple banking partners, which is very secure and easy to use. So that's the second component of things we offer to corporates. The third dimension has to do with supply chain, more notably with the bank payment obligation, which is a new payment term to secure and finance trade, which was initiated in sometime during the first half of 2013 together with the International Chamber of Commerce, and which basically released a unique set of legal and technology standards to unlock the potential of supply chain finance markets. And then the fourth and final dimension has to do with trouble-free payments and SEPA compliance, which is the topic of today's webinar, basically where we will spend a bit of time with you talking about reference data and how reference data can make your life easier in this context. When we talk about reference data, it might be good to take a quick start and define what is reference data. And if you basically look at the definitions you can find on the internet, basically reference data is defined as any type of data related to financial transactions that does not change in real time. Very nice definition. If you think about it, there's probably a lot of things that apply to that case, but I think there's a number of things that will easily be recognizable to you. There's, of course, the big codes, the business identifier codes, national bank identifiers, whether they be sort codes or clearing codes. More recently, legal entity identifiers, the LEI, that has been introduced for regulatory reasons, IBAN numbers, currency codes, standing settlement instructions, bank holiday information, SEPA scheme adherence and readiness for banks, etc. So all of these are described as reference data in this context, and they are basically within the scope of what we are talking about today. So why do you need all this information? Why is reference data important, and how does it help you in terms of making sure you run an efficient business? And we've tried to group it in basically 3 dimensions. The first one clearly is cost savings. I think anything that enhances the straight-through processing of your transactions clearly will have a positive effect on your organizational efficiency and will allow you to save money in a variety of ways, fees from service providers, resources that don't have to waste time on doing repairs and investigations. I think last year an analysis showed that on average having to repair or intervene in a payment transaction that cannot be straight-through processed on average costs 25 euros. So if you have a few of those, it adds up quite quickly. Second area is more related to risk. Delays in payments because of inaccurate data or because of wrong information contained within the payment transaction will cause delays and has potential risks as a consequence. You will miss out on discounts that are offered for early payments, and clearly it's not really helpful to have late payments with respect to how you are perceived by your suppliers and by your customers. So that, again, another reason why reference data can help and is of importance. And the third one, and that's one of growing importance, and I think we all suffer that in a variety of ways, is regulatory. We see that more and more regulation is coming up that makes people either report on their transactions or comply on how their transactions are executed. And again, that brings with itself a number of requirements with respect to reference data needed to properly process these. So lots of good reasons to have good reference data. And as I said, we see that regulation is clearly a driver for that. And at this stage, before I pass the word to my colleagues, I would like to basically get some feedback from your side. Regulation is impacting a lot of this industry and imposes requirements with respect to reference data. So I'd like to ask you to basically answer the following polling question: which regulation is impacting you most? SEPA, EMIR, Dodd-Frank, or any other that is appropriate to you. Please now you can tick the box on the right-hand side that is the most appropriate for you, and then we'll see immediately what the results are. Maybe whilst you vote and we wait for the feedback, Dodd-Frank, just to give some more context, U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission implemented Dodd-Frank regulation, first regulator to mandate use of identifiers, specific identifiers in regularly reporting, the LEI, the legal entity identifier, which must be used to identify yourselves, your counterparties, and underlying reference entities to a contract with standard identifiers. Clearly, something that we see popping up more and more. EMIR might be something that you suffer even more closely. The deadline to comply with EMIR requirements on reporting derivative transactions to trade repositories is actually next week, the 12th of February. Again, entities for which this regulation is relevant have to have a legal entity identified that identifies them properly, and that should be used in the context of this reporting. In the meantime, I see the results of the poll. So 67% of you said that SEPA clearly today is the hottest topic with respect to regulation that is impacting you. And EMIR only 17%, and national a bit more, 21%. So I guess clearly SEPA is on the front of our minds, and the fact that there has been a 6-month extension to the deadline for SEPA clearly also shows that still quite a number of people do not have their solutions in place. At this stage, enough from me for a moment. Let me pass you to IATA, a major corporate, probably that will sound very familiar to you when you hear them talk about the challenges that they faced with respect to reference data. Stephen?
Thank you very much, Patrick. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Darnley. I'm the Corporate Treasurer at IATA. Just to give you a little bit more context, because it'd be arrogant of me to assume that you all know who we are. IATA is the International Association, International Air Transport Association. I do apologise, I put my teeth back in. The organisation was founded in Havana in Cuba in 1945. We are the trade association for the world's airlines, representing their interests and managing settlement services for the airlines. It's a Canadian incorporated not-for-profit organisation with its legal seat in Montreal and its main executive offices in Geneva in Switzerland. We have 5 regional shared service centres in Amman in Jordan for Middle East and Africa, Beijing for China and satellite countries, Singapore for the rest of Asia-Pac, Madrid for Europe, and Miami for the Americas. IATA currently has 244 member airlines, and between them they account for 84% of the scheduled air traffic in the world today. So they do cover the bulk of the regular air transport. Settlements to these members are run through what we call BSP and CAS operations. BSP is basically passenger ticketing settlements, and CAS is cargo. And there are 263 of these operations around the world, and they serve 400 airline customers and 260 CAS airlines, cargo airlines. You'll notice that there are more airlines than there are members. This is because not every airline in the world is a member of IATA, but we do allow non-member airlines to take part in the settlement systems. And just to scope the other side of the settlement transaction, this is collecting money from some 60,000 travel agencies around the world and their associated branches, and 16,000 cargo agents. And to scope the size of the settlements, we settle approximately $165 billion annually through the system, which is about $450 million a day. So that's quite big bucks in anybody's language. And these 263 BSP and CAS operations are spread over 165 countries and involve relationships with 80-plus clearing banks. So this might lead you to the question, why SWIFT? If we can have the next slide, please. As you can imagine, having grown up piecemeal since 1945 across all of these different countries and operations, there was a considerable amount of local variation in the procedures and operations that were being followed in the settlement processes from country to country. And this misalignment of processes brought a lot of complexity to the process, and it made management of that process quite difficult. There was, because of the number of banks involved and the differences in local processes and different bank EB platforms, it was very difficult for us to have any consistent, consolidated view of the cash that was being settled through the process. It was impossible to control this centrally, and it made business continuity planning extremely difficult because the degree of variation from place to place meant that staff in one region would really not be familiar with how things were done in another place. So the project that IATA entered into some 4 years ago now was to find a way to bring some standardization to this process and to increase the level of automation to help us improve our settlement efficiency. In addition to this, we were seeking to improve the controls in the system. Obviously, as you can imagine from what I've just described, there was plenty of opportunity for that. And we wanted to reduce the risk of operating error or fraud creeping into the processes. In addition to which, if we could bring in a global standardized settlement reconciliation process, then we could also develop a business continuity plan by allowing one hub to back up the operations of another hub in the event that that hub was out of action for whatever reason. So with that in mind, IATA launched a project called IRIS, an IATA reconciliation and integrated settlement system some years ago, and this project enables us, enables us to improve the settlement process, and the initial market evaluation of the tools for us to support this project identified quite quickly that we would use SWIFT for corporates as the main communication channel between banks and to facilitate the settlement to our member airlines. And the SWIFT for corporate solution would be built upon the SWIFTRef data platform as its foundation. And at that point, I will hand over to my colleague Suresh, who will tell you a little bit more about that aspect of it.
Thank you, Stephen. So can I have the next slide, please? So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Suresh Dutt. I'm the Global SWIFT Implementation Specialist here at IATA, working very much on the SWIFT IATA IRIS project. And I'm going to spend the next few minutes just talking about what drove IATA's need for using the use of reference data. So very early on during the project scoping phase for IRIS, we recognized the fact that we held multiple data sets of airline and agent banking data over many countries around the world. As Stephen mentioned, we have a presence in 165 countries around the world and use 80 different clearing banks. And as a consequence, we hold data in many different places, such as local databases, local systems, online banking platforms, and also paper-based systems, which needed to be rationalized, standardized, and held in one central point. And IRIS was seen to be the solution for this issue. So we now hold all of that information in IRIS, but whilst migrating that data to IRIS, we needed to first cleanse the data and also complete incomplete banking information that was held in these databases. And that's where the SWIFT reference database came into play. So the SWIFT reference database was used to complete incomplete banking information where that was necessary. It was used to retrieve BICs from IBANs and also perform banking assessments where that was necessary also. So there were some occasions in some countries, especially the smaller countries that we operate in, where we weren't able to find a clearing bank that was score available, that was able to work with IATA via SWIFT. And as a consequence, we had to perform assessments in those countries to see what other banks were available that we could use that were present in the score network. And that's where the SWIFT reference database came into very much good use. We were able to look up and assess very quickly what the payment profiles were per country, per bank, and understand which banks we could approach to partner with IATA in order to work with us on our SWIFT IRIS project. We also wanted to reduce the number of failed payments as much as possible. And whilst analyzing the various banking requirements for SWIFT, for the various clearing banks we use around the world, we recognized that our data was not up to scratch. And the SWIFTRef database helped us to cleanse this data, validate this data, and also test this data to ensure that we were sending clear SWIFT data clear banking information via SWIFT to our clearing banks to ensure that our payments didn't fail. We also had the requirement to make sure that we were SEPA ready in some countries in Europe, where SEPA was going to be a key issue where we were operating, where we were currently using local account number and bank code formats. Again, we were very easily able to use the SWIFT reference database to look up the various clearing banks that we use and beneficiary banks that we use or that we pay to in those markets, and understand what their BICs and IBANs were, and ensure that we weren't going to have any failed payments due to incorrect banking information. As Stephen mentioned, we have a very aggressive target for ensuring that payments are made on time and without failure, and as a consequence, this was a very hot topic during the initial phase of the project. At this point, I think we're going to move on to our next polling question.
Yes, thank you, Suresh. Yes, so before we take a closer look as to how SWIFTRef practically can be a solution for you, we would like to get some additional feedback. So the second question we'd like to ask you is, where do you struggle most with your payments reference data? Is it to do with validating IBANs? Is it deriving the appropriate BIC from an IBAN in a SEPA context? Or is it to identify national bank and sort codes of beneficiary banks on a global scale, or any other? So please vote so that we can see where that leads us. By the way, whilst you are voting, I'd like to point out that IBANs and the use of reference data in an IBAN context is not limited to SEPA countries. I think today, worldwide, between over 63 countries, I think, have now adopted IBAN as their national account number structure, and therefore the way they get organized and the way they are identified is very similar to the way it is done in a SEPA context. So still a few seconds before we can see the result of the poll. Okay, let me see if there's okay. Whilst we wait, of course we can try to maybe move on. And sorry. Okay, we'll come back to this. Okay, so again, in the meantime, the results have come in. I apologize for that. I think actually the feedback is that national codes and sort codes of a beneficiary bank seem to be today the biggest struggle. You still identify over 1/3 of you indicate that this is the biggest challenge. The rest is spread more over the different topics. So that's good, because the next question actually is a question related to national codes, national bank codes. And therefore we would like to answer you now also the following question: which bank, a national bank, sort codes do you find difficult to find, are an issue for you to find? ABA numbers for the US, the CNAPS codes for China, Asian bank sort codes in general, Latin American sort codes, or any other not mentioned above. At this stage, please answer the poll, and we'll look at the results in a second. You should see now in the box the choices. So thank you for ticking. Whilst waiting for the feedback for the results of this poll, a thing to point out is very often what people underestimate is the fact that it's sometimes not that difficult to find a source and get this information. The challenge is to find reliable sources that allow you to maintain the data in an accurate fashion. Getting a one-time shot of these sort codes or national codes, again, as I said, there are different sources. However, this information changes on a daily basis. Codes get added and deleted. Typically in over 200 countries they are available. and therefore the actual maintenance, knowing when information has changed and how to then get the accurate information is very often a big challenge for financial institutions, but also for the corporate world. I think today SWIFTRef actually offers national bank and sort codes for 165 countries. And when I look now at the result of the poll, a large majority, 37% of your feedback is that Asian bank sort codes in general are the biggest challenge still today. The least of a problem is the ABA numbers for the US. So thank you for that feedback. So now let's move to the second part of the session. Let me summarize maybe what we just heard is what are reference data challenges today. Let's take a closer look. What are these challenges? And basically they all relate around the collection of the data, the maintenance of the data, and the accuracy and the completeness of the data. So you have the challenge is in the sources you use, the processes you use. Hundreds to thousands of suppliers worldwide from whom you get data that you rely on to update your ERP systems. The external providers, you have many different sources, many different processes related to those sources, internet external providers, Excel data sheets, bank provided data links. There's a lot of sources there that are typically still used. And in addition, we hear very often that different users of ERP system in your organization have access to the data, can modify it, and therefore clearly the whole picture is one where no one has a full view and a completely accurate view of the reference data as it is used in your context. So as a consequence, data maintenance, a lot of manual intervention, a lot of resource intensive and costly. And let's not forget that even though it is called static reference data, our estimates are that on a monthly basis, about 20% of the information that is contained in the different directories and repository of SWIFTRef, 20% of that data changes on a monthly basis. So getting a one-time snapshot is good, but it's only good for a limited amount of time. So what can you do about it? What has SWIFTRef to offer to you? And basically, the concept is quite straightforward. What we offer is a solution where, on behalf of the financial industry and on behalf of the SWIFT community, we basically will collect the data from as many sources as possible, always making sure that we stick to the official sources. We always go to the authorized source to get the data. We cleanse it, we cross-reference it, we maintain it, all within the SWIFT platform. So the first step is actually the collection and the maintenance. And as you can see, there are a large variety of sources that are used in this context, and that require, as I said, not just identifying and downloading that information once, but having a process in place that allows you to capture on a regular basis, on an ongoing basis, what are the changes, what are the updates, what are the additions. So the SWIFT Cooperative obviously allows us a privileged relationship with a lot of these financial players, and we leverage that to make sure that we have the right information and as complete as possible, especially under the pressures that we discussed, and where SEPA is a perfect example of a regulatory environment within which you don't need more or less accurate information. You need almost perfect data there to be able to rely on this information that drives the mainstream transaction processes of your payments and the related transactions. So the concept is we collect it. As you can see, it all comes on the platform where it is harmonized, where it is cleansed, it is maintained, and then once it is there, we actually package it into different directories that are adapted to specific users, that are adapted to specific use cases. In this case, I'm not going to concentrate today on other information that we also collect, such as financial data, etc. Today, we're really talking about the reference data that is required for payments transaction automation. And we have basically identified the data in 3 different groups. The first one is anything to do with that bank data. You've heard when IATA were speaking, you need information to identify financial institutions and corporates all over the world. You need to be able, if one of your counterparties or a party in a transaction is identified with a specific BIC code, for instance, you need to know what is the national bank identifier that corresponds with this, because if you want to deal with this transaction in a certain country, you are expected to have that information. Validating bank details, very often understanding the bank hierarchy with respect to certain reporting and analysis are important. Second one is anything to do with separate data. I'm not going to go through it in full detail, but it is obviously anything we talked about with respect to IBANs and BICs and being able to construct IBANs, and obviously within a SEPA context, make sure that you can reach the people in the most efficient way and find the appropriate routing. And then the third part is the standing settlement instructions, really finding correspondent banks, finding intermediary banks, depending on the currency codes involved. Just to point out the scope there, I'd say the SSIs we hold are SSIs for commercial payments, for foreign exchange and money market transactions, not for securities transactions at this stage. So that's fine. We have the data, we package it, and then the last step to do for you to be able to consume it is to publish it. And the information is published on the platform and then made available to all subscribers in the fashion that they choose. And as you will see on this slide, people have a lot of different choices to basically consume the reference data that they are subscribed to from the SWIFTRef platform, going from basically using an online browser tool that a person will use to to search information and consult it really through a search engine. Most of the other means are really to facilitate automated consumption of this data via a variety of channels, through the internet, through web services. And for SWIFT users, what we are seeing is that FileAct, which is a particular file-based protocol used on the SWIFT network, is becoming more popular because it allows people to further automate the updates on the receiving end, and therefore really streamline these processes as much as possible. So a lot of choice. In addition, different formats are available, TXT, XML, and probably last point I wanted to point out is that the frequency with which updates can be requested varies as well. And whilst we've seen that in the past, a cycle of monthly updates for most people was more than enough, and very often was basically what their back office system could cope with. We now see a very, very strong push for much more higher frequency, to have absolutely the latest data available, making sure that if the updates are provided daily, that they can be consumed on a daily basis. So SWIFTRef has made very strong efforts in that area. So of course, in the online tools, all the data is there, but in the web services, and even for those who consume the directories through file downloads, these can be downloaded on a daily basis in full or in Delta, and we would expect that, again, regulation will push us more in that direction. So I would like to ask you my final question for today. With regard to data frequency, how often would you require reference data updates? Monthly, daily, or in real time, to allow your applications to immediately validate the reference data in your environment? So please answer the poll. As I said, from where we're standing, this update frequency has been something that in the last 18 months we have seen the demand strongly evolving from from monthly to daily, and more recently we see that more and more people engage on implementing or consuming reference data or consulting reference data in their applications through web services and APIs, so that really they they can consult the SWIFTRef cloud with the latest information exactly at the moment that they require it. So let's look at the answer to your question, to the questionnaire. By the way, I'm asking questions, but of course, if you have any questions for me or for our friends from IATA, by all means, you can enter the question in the Q&A panel at any time, and we will take time after this session to deal with you. Okay, so once we have answered this question, I'm gonna pass back to Suresh, I think. So interesting feedback, actually. 1/3 on monthly, 1/3 on daily, 1/3 on real time. Quite interesting, the real time actually being so high. As I said, a year ago, this would have been substantially different. Okay, so at this stage, I think maybe Suresh, I'll pass back to you to see, well, in practice, SWIFTRef, has it achieved all the things that you were looking for? And then I think after that, we will wrap up and see if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Patrick. So once we had purchased the SWIFTRef product, we initially used to query the SWIFTRef product via the download of the SWIFTRef database, which we would put locally in order to cleanse our data as a reference to look up. And we would also use the website itself. So we would query the online tool to look up BICs, IBANs, and bank profiles. But the real challenge for us came in integrating the SWIFTRef IBAN Plus directory into our back office tool. That was the real goal for us, so that users could, in real time, look up IBANs to ensure that they were validated and correctly formatted, look up BIC codes to ensure that the BIC and the IBANs matched each other, and ensure that other reference data that was required for that local market or global market was up to date and accurate to ensure that we weren't going to have any failed payments. So that was the challenge, and with SWIFTRef, we were very easily able to overcome that challenge. So after a couple of discussions with our SWIFT Service Bureau and also with our vendor, we came quickly to the conclusion that what we would implement is the IBAN Plus directory in TXT file format over the FileAct network. So we actually have a monthly delivery, an automated delivery of the IBAN Plus directory to a local server where Iris will then pick up and transform that data and store it into a database held in the Iris back office database. And this allows us to look at BICs, perform validation on IBANs, convert local bank codes to IBAN format, and also derive BICs from IBANs. And this gives us a greater amount of flexibility and also insurance that the payments and the data that we're setting up to perform those payments is correct and accurate in Iris. Thank you. I'll now hand over to Stephen.
Okay, can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so just to sum up from IATA's point of view, what has been the value of SWIFTRef for IATA? As I mentioned at the beginning, in order to be able to implement Iris and to base Iris bank connectivity through the SWIFT for Corporate channel, we needed to ensure that we had a robust and solid foundation on which to build the whole thing, and the SWIFTRef product has provided us with that. The benefits that it has brought for us have been simplification. We've eliminated the variety of local practices by implementing the single standard Iris tool globally. That standardization has enabled us to improve our controls across the processes around the world, and also gives us much greater flexibility in terms of managing this process on behalf of the agents and our airline members because the staff in all locations all understand the same operating procedures. This standardization has enabled us to significantly increase the degree of automation in the process, and that automation has paid dividends for us in terms of workflow efficiencies and therefore helping to lower costs, and those, as a not-for-profit organization, those cost savings ultimately pass directly back to our airline members in terms of a lower cost of settlement process management. Also, they've significantly increased our ability to meet our key KPIs. Suresh mentioned earlier that we have very demanding payment targets to meet, and we do. If you think back to the numbers that I gave you at the beginning, 60,000 travel agents, 16,000 cargo agents, and 400 BSP airlines and the CAS airlines too. Each of these operations are settling 1 or 2 times a month, in some cases more frequently than this. So there are many hundreds of thousands of transactions that we're processing every year. We are tasked with delivering 99.95% of payments on time and correctly to the beneficiaries. We couldn't do this without the efficiencies that we've been able to implement by using SWIFTRef and building the solution that we have. So there you go. Thank you very much. I think it goes back to Patrick now.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, to really complete it and go back to and then end with Q&A. Just as a wrap-up, the data that we have been talking about in SWIFTRef, as I said before, it is packaged in different forms and can be consumed in a variety of ways depending on the user profile. What we have done is basically looked at how corporate customers need or want to use the information and basically offer it in 3 variations, basically from small to large, where depending on the size, depending on the fact whether you have many international payments or whether you have as well foreign exchange and money market transactions, there's 3 groupings of data that as a corporate you can subscribe to, and obviously these are compliant with SAP. We have similar arrangements with Oracle ERP, so in principle these packages can quite easily be integrated in the ERP environment of a corporate user. Maybe to mention, each of these packages does include access to Swift's online tool, where of course you have access to all the information in the database, not just the ones that is in the files provided there. And then my last slide, really SWIFTRef in a nutshell, basically. I think whether you are connected to SWIFT or not, as I said before, over 1,000 corporates are connected to the SWIFT network. Of course, many of these subscribe to the SWIFTRef services. At the same time, I think of all the total number of users that corporates that use SWIFTRef on SWIFT, half of those are not connected to SWIFT. So clearly, there's a value proposition out there. We have a global solution. SWIFT is global. It is worldwide. On top of that, as we said, as we mentioned a number of times, up-to-date daily or monthly updates. So all the files, and because I see that's one of the questions as well, all the files, all the directories that are published are republished on a daily basis. So there are updates every day. The extent of the changes, of course, depends a lot on the different sources and how updates are provided there. But in principle, all of the directories are published daily for those who want to, and of course then there's the monthly subscription as well. So, but as we see, more and more people need daily updates, need to know what has changed from one day to the other. Flexibility is another element that is important. I think any delivery channel, the delivery channels we have seen are a very important component of the ease of integration of these solutions in your environment. So we pay a lot of attention to this, and different syntaxes, and of course different prices depending on the scope of the solution you choose. And finally, I think once more to point out the compatibility with SAP and other ERP systems is something that clearly is very important from our perspective. That is what we wanted to share. So I think I'll hand it over to the moderator and see if there are some questions that we can answer for you. And maybe I can change. Maybe I can start with a few that have appeared on my. Oh, okay. Anne-Sophie will basically now take charge of the Q&A.
Just for your information, before we would end the session, you'll find on this slide where you can find any information about Swift reference data. You can go on our website, www.swift.com/SwiftRef. On there you will find also all technical information, fact sheets, documentation that may help you to get a better view on what exactly excluded in which directory and how you can exactly integrate it in your applications. If you would like more detailed information for your specific organization, please do not hesitate to drop us an email. You will find there the 3 email addresses per region where you can contact us. Now, as said, we're going to go straight into our Q&A session. I've seen already several questions have come in. Please don't hesitate to drop another question if you like in the Q&A section at your right-hand side. Patrick, can I ask you one first question? I see there is someone asking, is file like download today available?
Yes, absolutely. So as we said before, you can now use the FileLike channel to download the files on even on a daily basis. So of course it was there for monthly, but now also for daily basis. The channel is there to download all the different directories through that FileLike channel. Yes.
And then another question. Indeed, are all the BICs that are provided by Swift, even those that are not connected, are these also available in your directories?
Yes. Yeah. So of course, as we are the ISO registration company for the BIC, we issue BICs and updates on a daily basis. Some of those are specifically used to connect to Swift as well. Others are just to identify parties in transactions without implying connection to Swift. Both are maintained on a daily basis and published in the directories in the appropriate places. Yes.
Thank you, Patrick. I see also another question. Can I integrate SWIFTRef with my SAP solution? And do you have a reference customer that is using SWIFTRef in combination with SAP?
Absolutely. We first categorically yes. So the integration is absolutely something that we've been working closely, first of all, with SAP to make sure that we have formats and processes that are fully adapted and aligned with the SAP module that takes care of this. Secondly, we've worked closely with some of our corporate customers to really make sure that the whole process and the implementation works smoothly. So we have very positive experience and advice that we can give. On top of that, we have several corporate customers that basically have done this implementation and whom we can happily refer to as required, depending on the continent that you want to look at them. On top of that, on our website, there are reference customers mentioned that are more than happy to be contacted and willing to share experience.
Thank you. I also see, how do you handle local language requirements, such as for China and Japan?
Well, we have what is so in Bank Directory Plus, which is typically the directory that where the national codes are maintained. Clearly, we have seen that for many corporates, it is essential to be able to have the information related to those codes in the local language as well as in English, and therefore we have a file within there which is not surprisingly called the local language file, which provides local language for a number of countries. I don't know them all by heart, but Japan and China certainly are amongst them. We have some Eastern European as well, and if there are other Asian, I think we're working on a few others to complete that. But clearly, that is something we very quickly saw that for a corporate customer, this is quite important to be able to use the information in an efficient way.
Thank you. For our colleagues from IATA, there is a question indeed, which specific SAP or ERP system that you use?
IATA uses SAP for its internal corporate ERP system, but we don't use SAP for the settlements process that we've been describing today. As Suresh put in an answer to an earlier question, the settlement process is such a unique process that it was deemed more appropriate to build a specific tool to support that, and that's what IRIS is, the IATA Reconciliation and Settlement Integrated Solution. So that was built as a bespoke application with our third-party software vendors, and was built all along, as we described, to leverage the benefits that were available via SWIFTRef and SWIFT for Corporates.
Thank you, Stephen. There's a question, how do I get started with evaluating if SWIFT is a good solution for my firm?
Well, I'm not sure whether you want to ask SWIFT or whether you want to ask IATA.
Maybe we should ask both parties indeed. Patrick, would you like to start?
Well, I think short answer from the SWIFT side, we have a variety of means to provide trial access or sample access to people, and then discuss with them their experience in that respect. So basically, we give people access to the information so that they can really see whether it covers their requirements and how to best implement it, what best choices to make in that respect. Yes.
Yeah. And then from someone who's really been on that side, IATA, would you like to give some ideas on how other corporates should evaluate if SWIFT is a good solution for their company?
I think one of the things you should do is to look and see how many banking relationships you have and how you would like to rationalize those, or how you would like to standardize the way that you communicate with those various clearing banks that you use with your organization. If you are maintaining many different systems, if you are having many bespoke processes for each one of these clearing banks that you're communicating with, and you would like to rationalize that entire process, then SWIFT is the answer, and using the SWIFT for Corporates network is definitely the way to go.
Okay, thank you very much. I see there are a lot more questions. Since we've actually come to the end of our webinar, what I recommend is that you drop your question by email to us, and we have a whole team that is ready to respond to any of your questions, so please do not hesitate to do so. Also, before you go, we will send this presentation to all of you after this webinar, and we definitely look forward to speaking to you in the future. Thank you very much.
And thank you from IATA.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude today's webinar. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you and have a great day.